Karen calls police on Black Teen, only to discover his mother is the mayor. It was a quiet afternoon in Lakeside Oaks, the kind of day when everything seemed normal. Kids rode their bikes, neighbors watered their lawns, and the sound of birds filled the air. But something was about to happen that no one in this peaceful neighborhood could have predicted. A young boy named Jaden was riding his skateboard down the street, his backpack slung casually over his shoulder. He wasn't bothering anyone, just enjoying the day. But to one woman watching from her front yard, Jaden didn't look like he belonged. What started as an innocent moment quickly escalated when she made a phone call that would bring the entire neighborhood to a standstill. The police showed up, the boy's life was questioned, and the truth that unfolded left everyone speechless. You think you know how this story ends, but trust me, you don't. What happens next will shock you. It was the kind of day where everything in Lakeside Oaks seemed perfect. The sun hung bright in the sky, casting a golden glow over the neatly trimmed lawns and tidy houses. Children's laughter rang out as they rode their bikes up and down the street, their wheels kicking up dust from the smooth pavement. Neighbors waved to each other from their porches, exchanging friendly hellos. It was the picture of a peaceful suburban afternoon. Jaden, a 14-year-old boy, loved days like this. With his skateboard under his feet and his favorite playlist blasting in his earbuds, he felt free. His dark curls bounced as he glided smoothly down the street, his backpack slung lazily over one shoulder. It was just another quiet ride to clear his head. But not everyone saw it that way. Karen Whitmore stood in her front yard, watering her rose bushes. She was known around the neighborhood as someone who kept a watchful eye on her street. To Karen, every unfamiliar face was a threat, every harmless passerby a potential problem. And today, her sharp eyes caught sight of Jaden. She stopped mid-spray, narrowing her eyes as she watched him coast by. He didn't look familiar, she thought. He wasn't like the other kids she saw around here, kids who played soccer at the park or joined their parents at the block parties. Karen called out sharply, "Hey, you!" Jaden slowed, turning to face her. He pulled out one earbud, his polite nature taking over. "Yes, ma'am?" "What are you doing here?" she demanded, stepping closer. Jaden was confused. He wasn't used to being questioned for simply riding his skateboard. "I live here," he said, keeping his tone calm. Karen's eyes scanned him critically, her lips pressed into a tight line. "You live here?" she asked, her voice full of disbelief. Jaden nodded. "Yes, ma'am, Willow Lane." He pointed down the street, but it only seemed to make Karen more skeptical. "I've never seen you before," she said, folding her arms. "Who are your parents?" Jaden hesitated. Why was she acting like this? He wasn't causing trouble. He wasn't even near her yard. "My mum is Mayor Carter," he said cautiously, thinking it might help clear up the situation. Karen scoffed, waving her hand dismissively. "Mayor Carter, you expect me to believe that?" Jaden opened his mouth to respond, but Karen was already reaching for her phone. "I'm calling the police," she said, her voice loud and sure. "We don't need any strangers hanging around here." Jaden felt his chest tighten. "Ma'am, please." But Karen ignored him, turning her back as she spoke into her phone. "Yes, hello. I'd like to report a suspicious individual in the neighborhood. He says he lives here, but I don't believe him. He's acting strange, and I'm concerned for my safety." Jaden stood frozen, unsure of what to do. His heart raced as the weight of what was happening hit him. She wasn't listening to him. She didn't believe him. As Karen hung up the phone, she turned back to Jaden, her expression cold. "You can wait here for the police," she said. "Let's see if they believe your story." Jaden swallowed hard, his hands gripping the straps of his backpack. He wasn't sure how to feel, angry, scared, or just confused. He hadn't done anything wrong. Why was this happening? Minutes later, the sound of a siren broke the quiet of Lakeside Oaks. A police car pulled up, its lights flashing, and 2 officers stepped out. The neighbors, curious about the commotion, began to gather on their lawns, whispering and pointing. Karen walked up to the officers, her confidence unwavering. "Thank you for coming so quickly," she said. "This boy claims he lives here, but I've never seen him before. He's been wandering the neighborhood, and I think he's up to no good." The officers turned to Jaden, their expressions neutral but firm. "Son, can you tell us what's going on?" one of them asked. Jaden took a deep breath. "I live here," he said again. "On Willow Lane. I was just riding my skateboard." "Do you have any ID?" the officer asked. Jaden shook his head. "No, sir. I didn't think I'd need it to go skateboarding." Karen interrupted, her tone sharp. "Of course he doesn't have ID. He's lying." The officers exchanged a glance, unsure of what to do. Jaden stood still, his heart pounding as he looked around at the growing crowd of neighbors. He could see the doubt in their eyes, the unspoken assumptions. It wasn't just about his skateboard. It wasn't about where he lived. It was about how he looked. And no matter what he said, they weren't going to believe him. The tension in the air was palpable as the police officers stood in front of Jaden, their questions sharp but measured. Karen stood off to the side, arms crossed, watching the scene with a mix of triumph and suspicion. For her, this was justice, protecting her safe neighborhood from a boy who didn't fit her idea of belonging. Jaden's voice wavered as he repeated himself. "I told you, I live here. My house is just a few blocks away." The officer closest to him furrowed his brow, glancing between Jaden and Karen. "Do you know this boy?" he asked her. Karen didn't hesitate. "No, I've never seen him before. He's probably trespassing or casing houses. You know how they do." Her words dripped with thinly veiled prejudice, and the small crowd of neighbors murmured in agreement, their gazes heavy with judgment. Jaden clenched his fists, anger bubbling under the surface. He wanted to scream, to yell that he didn't deserve this, but he'd been taught differently. "Stay calm, Jaden," his father's voice echoed in his mind. "Keep your head down and stay respectful, no matter what." The officers exchanged a look, their unease growing. One of them spoke gently but firmly. "Do you have someone we can call, son? A parent or guardian who can confirm your address?" Jaden nodded quickly, hope flickering in his chest. "Yes, my mom. She's at work, but I can call her." Karen scoffed loudly. "Oh, let me guess. His mom's a lawyer or a judge, right? Maybe a doctor?" Her mocking tone drew a few nervous chuckles from the crowd, but the officers ignored her. Jaden pulled out his phone, his hands trembling slightly as he dialed his mum's number. The line rang once, twice, before a calm, authoritative voice answered. "Hi, sweetie. What's wrong?" "Mum," Jaden said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I need you to come to Maple Street. The police are here, and they're saying I don't live here." There was a pause on the other end of the line. Then, with a tone that could command a room, his mom replied, "Stay right there. I'm on my way." Jaden hung up and looked at the officers. "She's coming." Karen rolled her eyes. "We'll see," she muttered under her breath. Minutes felt like hours as the crowd grew larger, neighbors whispering and speculating. Jaden stood silently, feeling the weight of every stare, every sideways glance. It didn't matter what he said. They had already decided who he was. Then, the sound of tires crunching on gravel broke the silence. A sleek black SUV pulled up to the scene, and the crowd parted as the door opened. Out stepped a tall woman in a navy blue suit, her blonde hair pulled neatly into a bun. She walked with purpose, her heels clicking against the pavement, her expression unreadable. Karen blinked in confusion, recognizing the woman immediately. "Wait, that's Mayor Elizabeth Carter," someone whispered from the crowd. Elizabeth stopped in front of Jayden, her gaze sweeping over him quickly, checking that he was unharmed. Then she turned to the officers, her voice calm but commanding. "Can someone tell me what's going on here?" The officers straightened, one of them stepping forward. "We received a call about a suspicious individual in the neighborhood. The caller said he didn't live here." Elizabeth's eyes narrowed, and she glanced at Karen, who suddenly seemed much smaller. "Suspicious?" she repeated. "My son was skateboarding in his own neighborhood, and that's suspicious?" Karen's mouth opened and closed, words failing her. I didn't know he was your son," she finally stammered, her voice weak. Elizabeth crossed her arms, her gaze unwavering. "And why should that matter? Would you have called the police if he looked like you? Or was it because he didn't fit your idea of what a neighbor should look like?" Karen flushed red, stammering incoherently. I thought I was just trying to protect the neighborhood." Elizabeth's voice rose, steady and powerful. "Protect it from what? A 14-year-old boy riding a skateboard? This isn't about protection. This is about prejudice." The crowd was silent, the weight of her words sinking in. The officers stood awkwardly, unsure of what to do, while Karen avoided everyone's eyes. As if to punctuate the moment, another car pulled up, this time a police cruiser. The door opened, and out stepped a tall, dark-skinned man in uniform, Officer Marcus Carter. He took one look at the scene, his eyes landing on Jayden, his son. His expression was calm, but his jaw tightened as he turned to the officers. "What's going on here?" he asked. Elizabeth gestured toward Karen. "This woman called the police on our son, claiming he didn't belong in the neighborhood." Marcus turned to Karen, his gaze sharp and steady. "Our son has lived here his whole life," he said firmly. "He has every right to be here." Karen's face was pale now, her bravado completely gone. "I didn't mean," she started, but Marcus cut her off. "You didn't mean what?" he said. "To judge him by the color of his skin? To assume he was a threat because he looks different from you? That's exactly what you meant." Karen stammered, but no one was listening anymore. The truth of what had happened was clear, and no amount of excuses could change it. The crowd around the scene began to thin, but the weight of what had just happened lingered heavily in the air. Karen had retreated to her front yard, her face pale and her pride shattered. Jayden stood between his parents, unsure of how to feel. Relief that his mum and dad had come to his defense. Anger that it had to happen in the first place. Elizabeth placed a hand on Jayden's shoulder and looked at the officers. "I appreciate you responding to the call," she said, her voice calm but firm. "But I hope you understand what really happened here. My son wasn't suspicious. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He was targeted because of assumptions. Dangerous assumptions." One of the officers nodded awkwardly. "We understand, ma'am," he said, though his tone betrayed his discomfort. Marcus, still in his uniform, stepped closer to Jayden. "You okay, son?" he asked. Jayden nodded, though his voice was quiet. "Yeah, Dad." But Marcus could see the unease in his son's eyes. He had seen that look before, on the faces of too many young black boys who had been unfairly targeted, made to feel like criminals for simply existing. Elizabeth turned to Karen, who had been standing at a distance, trying to avoid eye contact. "Karen," Elizabeth said, her tone sharp but measured. Karen looked up, startled. "Yes?" Elizabeth gestured toward Jayden. "This is my son. His name is Jayden. He's 14 years old. He likes skateboarding, basketball, and math. He's a bright, kind, and respectful young man, and he has lived in this neighborhood his entire life." Karen swallowed hard, her face turning red with shame. I didn't know," she said weakly. "That's the problem," Elizabeth replied. "You didn't bother to know. You saw his skin and made a judgment. You called the police on a child who did nothing wrong." Karen tried to respond, but her words faltered. She looked at Jaden, then at Marcus, then back at Elizabeth, and for the first time, she seemed to realize the full weight of what she had done. Later that evening, back at their house on Willow Lane, the Carters sat in the living room. The house was quiet, but the events of the day still hung heavy in the air. Jaden sat on the couch, staring at his skateboard, his thoughts swirling. Elizabeth sat beside him, her expression softening. "How are you feeling?" she asked. Jaden shrugged. "I don't know," he admitted. I don't get why she thought I didn't belong here. I wasn't doing anything wrong." Marcus leaned forward, his elbows resting on his knees. "Sometimes people make assumptions because of fear," he said. "Fear of what they don't understand. It doesn't make it right, but it happens. And when it does, you have to stand tall and show them who you really are." Jaden looked up at his father. "But what if it happens again? What if they still don't believe me?" Elizabeth put her arm around him. "Then we keep fighting," she said. "Not with anger, but with courage and truth. You don't have to prove your worth to anyone, Jaden. You belong here. You belong anywhere you choose to be." Jaden nodded slowly, his parents' words giving him a sense of strength he hadn't felt before. He thought back to Karen's face, the way her expression had changed when she realized the truth. It wasn't enough to erase what had happened, but it was a start. The family sat together for a while longer, the quiet of the house wrapping around them like a blanket. Outside, the street was dark and still, but inside, Jaden felt a flicker of hope. He knew this wouldn't be the last time he faced prejudice, but he also knew he wouldn't face it alone. In the days that followed, word of what had happened spread quickly through Lakeside Oaks. Some neighbors defended Karen, insisting she had only been trying to protect the community. Others sided with the Carters, recognizing that what had happened wasn't about protection, it was about prejudice. For Jaden, the experience lingered like a shadow. Everywhere he went, he felt the weight of people's stares. Even when no one was watching, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were. Elizabeth, determined to turn the moment into something positive, decided to hold a community meeting. Flyers went out to every house, inviting residents to gather at the local recreation center to discuss what had happened and how the neighborhood could move forward. When the day of the meeting arrived, the room was packed. People from every corner of Lakeside Oaks had come, their faces a mix of curiosity, guilt, and concern. At the front of the room stood Elizabeth, Marcus, and Jaden. Elizabeth began to speak, her voice calm but filled with emotion. "What happened last week was not just about my son," she said. "It was about all of us. It revealed assumptions, biases, and fears that we need to address, not just here in Lakeside Oaks, but everywhere." The room was silent, every eye on her. "We often talk about this neighborhood as a safe place, a good place to raise children," Elizabeth continued. "But that safety and goodness must extend to everyone, not just those who look a certain way or fit a certain mold." Karen, sitting in the back of the room, shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Elizabeth paused, her gaze sweeping across the crowd. "I'm not here to point fingers or assign blame. I'm here to ask for something greater. Understanding. We all have biases, whether we realize it or not. The question is, what are we going to do about them?" As the meeting went on, neighbors began to share their thoughts. Some spoke of their own experiences with prejudice, while others admitted They hadn't thought much about it until now. Marcus spoke about his years as a police officer, the challenges of navigating both sides of a divided world. And then Jaden stood up. His voice was quiet at first, but it grew stronger as he spoke. "I just want to be treated like any other kid," he said. "I didn't ask for this to happen, and I didn't deserve it. I love living here, but sometimes it feels like no matter what I do, people are waiting for me to mess up. I just want to belong." His words hung in the air, raw and powerful. Karen slowly stood up, her hands trembling slightly. "I made a mistake," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I saw Jaden, and I judged him without knowing anything about him. I let my fears get the better of me, and I'm sorry." Jaden looked at her, his expression a mix of surprise and uncertainty. Karen turned to Elizabeth and Marcus. "I can't take back what I did, but I can promise to do better, to listen, to learn." The room was quiet, but something had shifted. After the meeting, neighbors lingered to talk and connect in ways they hadn't before. Some approached the Carters to apologize or to share their support. Others left deep in thought, reflecting on their own actions and assumptions. As Jaden walked home with his parents, the night air cool against his face, he felt a sense of hope. The pain of what had happened hadn't disappeared, but something new had taken its place, the belief that change was possible. Elizabeth stood in front of the camera for her closing remarks. "This isn't just a story about my son, it's a story about all of us. It's a reminder that we need to challenge our assumptions and treat each other with kindness, respect, and fairness." Marcus nodded. "These conversations aren't always easy, but they're necessary. Let's create a world where no child feels out of place simply because of how they look." Jaden smiled softly. "I just hope this inspires people to think differently, to see each other for who we really are, not just what they assume." Elizabeth turned back to the camera. "What about you? Have you ever experienced or witnessed something like this? Share your story in the comments. Let's learn from each other, grow together, and create a better community for everyone." The video ended with a simple but powerful message. Understanding begins with listening. Change begins with us. This story is bigger than Jaden. It's bigger than Lakeside Oaks. It's a reflection of something many of us have experienced, witnessed, or perhaps even ignored. A world where assumptions are made too quickly, where people are judged unfairly simply for existing in their own skin. But it doesn't have to be this way. We can be the ones to break the cycle. We can choose to look beyond the surface, to see people for who they really are, not for what we assume them to be. It starts in our own hearts, in our own homes, in our communities. Every small action matters. A kind word, a moment of understanding, standing up when we see something that's wrong. Jaden's story is one of many. There are countless others out there, stories of young boys and girls, men and women who face unfair treatment because of prejudice. Some of those stories end in hurt and anger. Others, like this one, can become a catalyst for change. Ask yourself, how many times have I stayed silent when I should have spoken up? How often have I made an assumption without knowing the full story? We've all done it. None of us are perfect. But perfection isn't the goal. Progress is. This isn't just a call to feel inspired, it's a call to act. To have those uncomfortable conversations with friends and family, to teach our children to see the beauty in diversity, to challenge our own biases, even the ones we don't want to admit we have. Racism doesn't always look like hatred. It can look like fear, like avoidance, like Karen calling the police because Jaden didn't look like he belonged. These small, seemingly insignificant moments of prejudice can grow into something bigger if we don't stop them. But here's the good news. Change is possible. We saw it in Lakeside Oaks. We saw neighbors beginning to talk, to listen, to reflect. It's proof that even the smallest actions can ripple outward and create something powerful. To those watching this video, I want to ask you, have you ever experienced something like this? Have you ever felt out of place, judged or treated unfairly because of how you look or where you come from? Share your story in the comments. Let's create a space where these conversations can happen. A space where everyone feels heard and valued. And if you've ever stayed silent when you should have spoken up, or if you've made assumptions that weren't fair, now is the time to reflect. It's not too late to change. It's never too late to start seeing people for who they truly are. This isn't just about subscribing to a channel or watching a video. It's about being part of something bigger, a community of people committed to love, justice, and understanding. By joining us, you're not just a viewer, you're a voice, and every voice matters. So let's make a promise together. Let's promise to listen more than we speak, to act with kindness before judgment, to teach the next generation that our differences are what make us strong. Because in the end, we are all neighbors. We are all part of the same human family. And when one of us is hurt, ignored, or mistreated, it affects all of us. Let's be the generation that finally says enough. Enough to prejudice, enough to division, enough to silence. Let's create a world where everyone feels like they belong. Together, we can make it happen. And it starts right now with you.